already seen the gangs that roam the streets of Night City in 2077, the cybernetic obsessed maelstrom all the way to the net obsessed individuals of the Voodoo Boys. However, they are just some of the many factions that have once roamed this neon metropolis. Back in 2045, during the time of the Red, gangs were everywhere within the city and all were far more crazy than the ones of 2077. So in today's episode we will be exploring every single one of these gangs and what made them unique. Once again, this lore comes from Talzorian Games' latest sourcebook, Night City 2045, which comes out in June of this year on the recording of this video. And once again, thanks to my relationship with them, you can get a nice 10% off of it if you use my affiliate link below. So you can read all of this lore for yourselves if you so wish. But for those who just want the lore as of now, let's dive into every single gang from Night City in the year of 2045. We start our list with what are mainly gangs that focus on having a good time and performing. These are the party gangs and the performing gangs. Gangs I have grouped together because of their similar activities. The first is named the Albino Alligators, who locate themselves out within their headquarters of the Albino Alligator Car Wash in Rancho Coronado, as well as the Hen House on Southside Night City. This gang originally started as a poser gang who acquired their name thanks to many promotional polo shirts they found at this said car wash before it went out of business. This shirt was black with a cartoon-like white alligator carrying an assault rifle on the back side of it. This became the gang's logo as they would wear the shirts on their day-to-day, with many of their members also getting tattoos of it on them. By 2045, they were under the leadership of Tarquin, who had large ambitions for the gang beyond just having fun and causing chaos. For a time, she wanted to turn Woodland Park, a neighborhood at the edge of the city in North Hayward, into the gang's real estate empire. But to do that, she needed to convince the locals to sell up, and with it, started their intimidation campaign to get rid of them. However, after dealing with mercs throughout this year, they were eventually pushed out of the neighborhood for good, and with it, it seems they had a change in leadership, as they are now run by Big Bruno. After this whole affair, the Albino Alligators kept their influence within the area and actually expanded on it, as they were one of the few reliable sources of water in Rancho Coronado thanks to their car wash base. As long as the gang remains within this car wash, the Gators will be big players in this district, even though they have extremely cheap guns, cheap armor, and tons of scavenged equipment. Granted, they might have big ambitions to expand and become a major influence on the city, and they do not really sound like a party gang, but at the end of the day, they still just want to have fun and party into the night with their nice black polo shirts with the white alligator on it. Next, we have the Euro Trashers, a gang that likes to get itself into parties, obviously, as well as involving themselves in muggings and random acts of violence. This gang is under the leadership of Lise Refrain Shara, and their hideout is within Choppers, a biker's bar in Little Europe. This gang dresses in an old school 1980s fashion as they have an utter love for that aesthetic and base their whole identity around that time period. Not only that, but the gang also takes on vaguely European, indecipherable accents and pretty much spends their whole time partying it up. When they do party, drunk tourists are targeted during this and are scammed out of their money so that the Eurotrashers can use it to keep partying. If this gang is threatened, however, the members will most likely pull out a blackjack or a knife to solve their problem. However, if anything does get really bad, they have been known to pull out guns from time to time. But essentially, this gang is like if you were to visit the dingy dark bars of Eastern Berlin in the 1980s. The Muses are a gang that like to get involved in roller derbies. Under the leadership of Calliope, this gang looks like your typical disco lovers, as well as wearing togas when partying it up. Their headquarters is located in Xanadu, which is a 1980s film reference that I absolutely love, but this is essentially a roller rink run by them within North Hayward. Ultimately, if you know about the Olivia Newton-John film, that'll tell you all you need to know about who this gang is, or at least what they look like. They combine massive 1980s haircuts with ancient Greek fashion and hold roller skate parties regularly, as well as take part in Night City's Wonderland Roller Derby League. This group is extremely extra and stun everyone when partying it up. They aren't a violent gang really, and just like to do what they love to do, but if they were to be attacked or threatened in any way, they will retaliate with their cudgels and pistols that are fully customized to look like disco balls, because of course they are. So if you love discos, you'll love the Muses. The Piranhas are a gang I've covered quite a bit in my video about their main headquarters, Playland by the Sea, so this will be a shorter version of what they do within this year. Originally, these party gangers were just pretty poor, dwarfed up partiers and nothing more. However, their leader, Corpse Reviver, was one who pushed them into a new direction. Under her rule, the Piranhas went around acquiring all the other party gangs and organized them into cells known as shoals. With that, she also made it their overall mission to become the reigning purveyors of parties in the city. If anyone wants to throw a party, the Piranhas are the ones they need to turn to, regardless of size or theme. That said, they aren't always behind the running of parties, but they will always play a part within them. Selling drugs, setting up connections, and sex work will all be done by them during the party. Thanks to this rule, many of the city's DJs, light and sound crews, bouncers, drug cooks, dealers, and sex workers are all members of the Piranhas, meaning that it's almost impossible to not have one at your block party. Thanks to their major influence, they are now the official private security of Playland by the Sea, with around 50% of the workers here being a part of the gang to make sure other, more deadly gangs do not take over it. Unlike the other gangs on this party gang list, the Piranhas do not shy away from carrying firearms, as they are all kitted out with pistols and SMGs, and the larger shoals include one enforcer armed with much heavier weaponry. That said, those guns at parties are usually loaded with less than lethal ammunition, because in their eyes, dead guests can't spend money at future events, so it's not worth them being shot with real bullets. Ultimately, if you want the biggest and best party people will talk about for years, then you will need the Piranhas to help you with it. Next is the Rat Kings, who are also known for their role in muggings, theft, extortion, and random acts of violence. This gang is under the leadership of Mario Corona Fernandez and locate themselves within Mega Building H4 or the Bar of Gold in Santo Domingo under the logo of 5 rats with their tails linked together, making a sort of star symbol. Essentially, this gang is the result of an extremely underfunded society, which has led to the kids of that area forming into their own gangs and causing havoc on the streets. Essentially, in Mega Building H4, the Rat Kings are known to all as being a major nuisance. They go around causing chaos, committing any and all crimes, and attacking people for fun, and then when the police come looking for them, will jump right back into their mega building to hide it out, and this is where they spend most of their days. For some of the non-Rat King residents of H4, those who live within the lower levels of it, they all seem to know at least one of the members. However, they refuse to speak out about who they are, and the reason being is most of them are family members of some kind. Essentially, this gang just does what it wants. It's been rejected by society, and because of that, it does not treat it with respect, and that is how they live their lives, rebelling and causing problems for authorities. That said, their weaponry is pretty weak, as they do not have the funds for high quality weaponry, but either way, with how many there are probably within H4, it's best not to really mess with them at all and let them do their thing. Generation Red is a very small gang that isn't really a party gang, but its main activity is listed as being hanging out, so I feel they deserve to be within this group. Their leader is an individual simply named Apex, and they locate themselves in the old combat zone within the old corporate offices named the Farnsworth Building.
Good news, everyone!
Their identity is pretty vague, and all that is known is they wear their logo on their clothes. Once a Yo gang, aka a kid-run gang, Generation Red has a negative relationship with another gang known as the Kill Crashers, who invaded their clubhouse. To this day, they are looking to fight back against them and seem to have got the Edge Runners faction and the Danger Girl faction to side with them, as they have sent representatives to chat with the gang about their future. Unfortunately, that's all there is for now, but still, it's a cool logo faction anyway. And finally, in this category, we have the theatre or performer focused gangs. The first one being the Juilliard Gang. This gang is under the leadership of Sebastian Shakespeare McBride and hang out within the Nightingale Theatre in downtown Night City, as well as the Night City Plaza in the Glen, focusing their efforts on performances, busking, as well as protection as well, under their logo of the recognizable theatre masks. How you spot these individuals is through this logo, as it is stickered on their instruments most of the time. Juilliard are passionate about busking, however, that is their turf. If you were to perform on the streets or in end-cart stations, you will be first given a friendly invitation to join the gang. But if you were to ignore that and continue on your own, you will be given a second reminder to move on, and if that's ignored, they will bring their weapons to the show. If you were to join as a performer, the guild would go on to claim 15% of your take, but with that comes their complete protection from what they claim are aggressive patrons. Not only that, but they gain access to exclusive performance spots in the city, which includes the Night City Plaza. The Piranhas have a very close relationship with the guild as they use these performers for their parties, so even more protection for those wanting to just play their music or whatever they do. At the end of the day, Night City isn't safe, and if you want to perform your art, it's best to be a part of this guild. Finally, there is the Philharmonic Vampires, a gang that loves its goth aesthetic and to look like vampires essentially. Run by their leader known as the Master, as well as Acme, this group is known for its theatrical productions as well as pranking individuals, located at their hangout of the Night City Symphony Hall in the University District. The gang didn't always used to be goths and that culture. They used to be just a prankster gang. However, one prank in 2010 saw them dress up in tuxedos, capes and vampire fangs so they could photobomb the Night City Symphony. The plan was to fly behind the orchestra on wires during a Halloween concert, and after that, the gang seemed to enjoy that specific aesthetic and dived into the vampire theme until that whole identity took more of a role over their pranking ways. Now, the gang is split into two factions. The ones led by the Master, who are fully focused on being goths as well as horror aesthetic performances at the Symphony Hall, and the second faction is run by Acme, who wants to bring them back to their pranking ways. That said, the two do still get along, and the pranksters enjoy the parties of the goths, and the goths involve themselves within the pranks as they see it as being artistic expression. Essentially, if you are to join this gang, you get to pick if you want to be a prankster or just a fun-loving vampire goth. And the best part is, they don't really get involved in fights, as they are more likely to flee into the night. But that said, quite a few do know martial arts and use it if they really need it. End of the day, it just seems like another day in the Black Parade. This isn't their official title, but next I have grouped the gangs that wrap themselves up within petty thefts or theft in general. Granted, there are other gangs on this list that get involved in theft, but these gangs seem to make it their whole identity. The first one is known as the Andersons. Under the leadership of Molly Anderson, this gang roams around all of Night City, not really having a specific place that they hang out, donning tons of denim clothes as well as Anderson tattoos across their knuckles of both hands to let everyone know who is punching them in the face. Like a few gangs on this list, the Andersons were once a yo gang and extremely family orientated. Most of the members are not related by blood, however becoming part of the gang means they will be given a surname and with it the Anderson identity. Originally these members formed together for survival, but as more joined their ranks, they became an extremely efficient group of scabbers, thieves and muggers and ran their own supply chain for the Night City black market, and that was mainly thanks to Molly and her contacts. Once again, this gang links closely with the Piranhas, but that is mainly due to the fact that Molly has formed a relationship with one of the top dogs, or top fish I should say, a man named Ricky Hamilton. This relationship has put into question the future of the Anderson family, and if they were to break down, it's most likely they will merge into the Piranhas. But it could be that another Anderson takes the reins and their legacy of scavenging and theft will continue on for many years. The next gang on our theft list is a gang we sadly know nothing really about. They're called Mudang Gumi. Their leader is unknown, identity also unknown, however what is known is that they hang out around Dream Forest development within the Pacifica district. What is believed is that this group, who undergo the logo of a green spiderweb, are tech-obsessed netrunners who are ultimately thieves and engage in acts of sabotage, espionage and other forms of cybercrimes. It's unknown why they do what they do, however many believe that this whole gang is actually fully funded by the Korean megacorporation known as Tansen, which would explain why this whole gang is so secretive. The Red Chrome Legion, however, are very much known, and me personally, I absolutely love the idea of them. Under the leadership of Vox and Populi, the Red Chrome Legion bases itself out within the Chrome Cross located in Little China, as well as Kid Camp and Whiteside in Old Japantown. This group was once a poser gang of teenagers who would cosplay as Nazis, so much so that eventually this became their whole identity and they started to believe the same views, and ultimately that way of life became the whole of the gang's identity. That said, a lot of the group looked further back in history and started to talk a lot about the great Caesar and the empire that he built, and wanted to follow in suit, hoping that they could conquer Night City and establish a new hub which they would claim to be a new American empire, free of the pollution of foreign filth and corrupt cultures. As of 2045, this gang is seen to all as a booster gang, and they are stuck within an endless war with another gang that I'll explore next, namely Ironsights. The Red Chrome Legion is however losing this war badly, and their territory has shrunk by roughly half of what they originally had. Vox and Populi are the new leaders after a violent takeover, however their goals are still the same, and maybe one day they will rise up and take over all of Night City with their troops wearing their gas masks with glowing red lenses. Clearly that didn't happen, as they are nowhere to be seen in 2077, but maybe one day they will come back and bring with it neo-fascism ideas and the word of the great Caesar himself. And talking of the Ironsides, they are also in the same ranking as the Red Chrome Legion. Under the leadership of Blood Guts, the Ironsides locate themselves in a variety of places all over Night City, including Alice's, Bladeware, Ionic Semiconductor Building, Neo Galaxy Cards, and Comics and Tartarus. The way you can spot these intimidating individuals is by their scars on their face, as well as their classic punk haircuts, which most of the time are mohawks. This gang seems to live by the idea that they never die because they have been attacked multiple times by other gangs, but they just keep coming back. Maelstrom absolutely destroyed them on multiple occasions, but yet here we are still talking about them as they live on. This is because they always seem to have a patron paying for them to survive. This time it is an individual named Hornet who has helped them survive in 2045, but also now wants them to dominate and grow as a result. This gang is the definition of a gang, and they do everything you'd expect a gang to do, as they control as much territory as they can. If anyone of a rival gang walks through their neighborhood, the Ironsides would jump on them immediately and take them out. They are that territorial. There are no exceptions. You have to pay the toll, and this time it's your blood. As mentioned, the Ironsides are in a fierce war with the Red Chrome Legion, and for a good few decades it seems that that is their story. Who knows if they're still alive, but as their history has suggested, it's most likely they will return at some point. We all know who the Scavers are. I have explored them before within another video, so I won't talk about them too much. However, these individuals aren't really a gang per se. They are more of a classification for those who take up this lifestyle. Well, in 2045 anyway. In 2077 it seems they are more organized and hold values, if you can call them values. In 2045 these individuals are obsessed with the hot zone, place where the nuke went off, and venture in there to find anything they can, from weapons, copper, platinum, old tech, and so much more that they can sell. They do have scaver groups, however, such as the Crawling Cobras, who are independent operators, and there's even some scavers who undergo the name of diggers, who work for larger gangs such as Maelstrom. Ultimately, these scavers are anyone who wants to risk their lives in dangerous areas for loot that they can sell. They are most of the time independent and are just desperate to thrive in this new world, and will find any way they can to acquire eddies, which would also most likely include theft of property. And finally, we have the Lightning Cats, the gang that aren't necessarily a theft gang, but they are scavers, so felt like they deserve to be put in this list as well. Under the leadership of Bengal Khan, the Lightning Cats are a tale told throughout Night City. It is said that on a dark night, a group of feline-inspired gang members would be seen entering a cheap Ripper dock, and when there would undergo a body sculpting operation that would transform them into complete monsters. Because of how bad that operation was, it was said that these individuals fled into the hot zone to live life in the shadows. Whilst this is just the story told by residents, the truth was that this group was just a gang of cat-like exotics living out within the old med center, and rather than looking like monsters, just look like body sculpted cat people. With that, they like to also live like how felines would out in the wild, not like domesticated cats. This means they would go around scrounging for any and all resources they can find, and these gang members are actually incredibly skilled in hand-to-hand combat and specialize in aikido, judo, as well as cyber weaponry. So if you find yourself in the hot zone, you might suddenly find yourself being attacked by a gang of body sculpted cat people who just want your stuff. Next we have the gangs that like to engage in acts of smuggling as well as other forms of crime. First we have the Arzin Tynon, a gang that focuses on drugs, racing, extortion, random acts of violence, as well as of course smuggling. The Arzin were around before the Fourth Corporate War. Not grand in size, they were just a minor gang, but as the war progressed they found their footing and found their new goal, which was black market smuggling. This gang was one of the bravest to trek over the NorCal highways on their motorbikes, which was perfect for smuggling the goods as they could fit in their saddlebags to bring to Night City and make tons of eddies. Because of this way of life, the gang is now heavily focused on old school 20th century biker culture under the leadership of Jimmy DeQuelo Miles, and based themselves in multiple places over the city, including City Top Daycare and H-Town in the Watson development area, as well as Value Mart Village in New Westbrook. This gang is not to be messed with. Whilst their glory days of smuggling during a war are now gone, they still have major influence and with it pack a mean punch. Whether if you are confident and stand up to them, they will respect that. They'll probably kill you, but they will do it with respect. Next we have Maelstrom, and whilst I was going to put them into a later section about extremely violent gangs, Maelstrom in 2045 are a bit different to how they are in 2077. Whilst I have made a massive video about the gang before, I will just cover how they are perceived within these years specifically. In 2045, Maelstrom is under the rule of Warlock and involve themselves in the drug scene, extortion, smuggling, random violence, targeted violence, as well as mercenary work. Like many of the other dangerous gangs, these guys are located in multiple places, including the Ashcroft Hotel, their club of the Totentans, and the Dump in the Hot Zone district, the Forge and Travel Stay City Centre within the Upper Marina, and Red Cab Company in Little Europe. As we all know, these individuals love their cyberware, and with it they engrave their skull logo onto it. Maelstrom have been around since the 2010s and have been growing ever since then. They believe that chrome is almost a religious thing to have, and over the years have absorbed other booster gangs as well, usually by defeating them in combat. In 2045 they are one of the largest drug and tech trafficking gangs and have a massive network, and as mentioned before, even hire other gangs to do their work, like the Scavers. They keep techies and ripper on their payroll, usually against their will, and they keep things so organized that even the best NCPD can't do anything about them, leading many to believe that Maelstrom aren't actually a gang anymore and are instead a full-on crime syndicate. You do not want to get on the bad side of Maelstrom. Despite what you think of them, they are incredibly smart as an organization and have people all over the city that can take you out in a heartbeat, especially if you meddle with their trafficking network. Finally, under the leadership of Harnina Rose, the Steel Vaqueros are a smuggling and survival gang who locate themselves in the Eagle Rock Stadium in Rancho Coronado, as well as Silver Pixel Cloud in New Westbrook and Minimalism also in Rancho Coronado. Technically, this gang is a nomad pack, but they have gone against the traditions and have set up shop in one location, so it's now a gang. They also venture around the West Coast trading goods, and because of these specific things, they have unaligned with the 7 nomad nations. Living within caravans still, these individuals, as mentioned, go around trading goods and offering their own services. The rest of the family members stay behind in Night City and Salinas, where they run shops and hold down their locations whilst the caravans go out and trade, and once they've finished that, can come home and relax. How they get their goods obviously must come from smuggling, but they are a good trader to come across if you need one when out on the West Coast. They're your standard nomad clan ultimately. They just have a home where they go back to instead of endless traveling. So because of that, they're simply just another gang of Night City. Next we have the extremely violent gangs who, as you can probably guess, get a kick out of causing carnage and complete devastation. First we have the Bozos, who I won't go into too much because, like with Maelstrom, I have done a full video on them, so nothing will be different. But under the leadership of multiple cybernetic clowns, this group used to be just pranksters who lived in an artist's colony. They would undergo body sculpting to look like circus clowns and pranked street performers with water balloons and paint splashes. However, later in their years, a cyber Psycho Tech took over as the Great Bozo and took the gang into a new, extremely dark direction. Pranks changed from being harmless to deeply psychological and designed so that they would completely destroy an individual and push them to their limits. Such things like trapping someone in an elevator and loading it up slowly with water. The Great Bozo was seen as a horrific individual, but some of the other clowns wanted even more, and with it split into different factions and started a civil war between multiple circuses where they would try and outprank each other and drive innocent civilians completely insane. Ultimately, the Bozos are a terrorist gang, and regardless of who wins their insane civil war, humanity as a whole loses because of it. The Enhanced are sort of similar to Maelstrom, as they are absolutely obsessed with cyberware and, as the name suggests, enhancing themselves, as they also etch their logo into their cyberware as well as brand themselves or tattoo themselves with it. Technically, this is a secretive cult, and unfortunately because they are so secretive, not much is known about them, which includes their leader and their hangouts, although some can guess where they might be. A lot believe they either own or are heavily invested in Gunmart, and whilst being there, hold the view that cyberpsychosis is the next phase of human evolution. What a perfect combination of things, a gun shop and cyberpsychosis. What could go wrong? Some believe that they are part of an older gang that was focused on neuralware known as the Brainiacs from the 2020s, but that's all speculation as well. Despite being known for their love of cyberpsychosis, the gang doesn't actually commit acts of violence, but they do encourage it, trying to make it so it comes naturally. They do this by flooding the streets with cheap guns and starting things between rival factions. But if they were to get involved in something, the gang members or cult members would rather blow themselves up in a fiery explosion rather than be captured and questioned or even tortured. Essentially, those insane individuals from Maelstrom in 2077 are what would have been the Enhanced in 2045 in my opinion. On the other side of the spectrum, you have the Inquisitors, who are a gang who absolutely despise all things to do with cyberware, and because of it are the Enhanced's major enemy. Like with the Enhanced, all knowledge about their leader or their hangouts is unknown, but they can be seen thanks to their logo being etched into jewelry, white hoodies, gas masks, or as tattoos. Cyberware is an abomination to the Inquisitors, as it eats away the soul of humanity in their eyes. Roaming the streets at night, the Inquisitors will attack anyone who has any cyberware on them, regardless of if they are innocent individuals or not. But usually it is Maelstrom and the Enhanced who are the targeted ones. Because of the nature of their work, the Inquisitors operate using passphrases and secret handshakes that identify one another, somewhat like the Stonecutters.
Wah! Wah! Wait! Wait! Well, I didn't realize you were a member.
Because of this, Inquisitors come from all classes and places of life. They could be anyone you know, your neighbour, your boss, or even the bartender watching over your local bar. In recent years, corpse owner teenagers have been brought into their ranks and completely radicalized, and to fight back against not just cyberware individuals, but ladder climbing parents as well. Torturing these individuals will do nothing either, as they are so secretive. Different Inquisitors know different things and might not even know what their fellow members know. So ultimately there is nothing you can do about them. So watch out if you have some chrome at night, because you might be attacked by these secretive cultists. Led by Carrion, all over Night City are the Kill Crashers, who don the colours of red and black. This gang absolutely loves violence, and that is it. They are a classic Dorfer gang made up of young adults and teens who have enough money to buy drugs and weapons. If you were walking around the city and went on to spot a mob of armed high punks with blood red rippers shouting F everything, then you've done it. You've found the Kill Crashers. Granted, one or two of them won't be able to do much, but if a large group of them come around the corner, they are going to cause wide amounts of destruction. So yeah, ultimately in the words of the UK Daily Mail, it's just a bunch of yobs from Croydon. Have you ever loved a TV show so much that it made it your whole personality? Well, the primetime players are exactly that. Media-inspired body sculptors and costumed individuals under the leadership of Victor Vang. This gang was massive back in the day, as so many individuals posed as their favourite television stars, taking on everything that made them them. However, back then they were all independent, but now in the time of the Red, they have all formed under Victor, who was a Vietnamese action movie star. Some still stayed independent, but most of them, which included the Kennedys, the Castaways, the Final Frontiers, and the Stallones, all fall under their umbrella. Because of their whole identity being these characters, it does mean they also have the same weaponry and use them in appropriate ways, and they really will. Despite looking and sounding hilarious, if you are roaming Night City and turn around, you might suddenly come face to face with a ton of Kennedys walking towards you, endlessly quoting his famous space speech, ready to shoot you in the head from within a book depository. Do not underestimate these strange individuals. The Reckoners are one of the infamous nihilistic doomsday cults. Many doomsday cults died out in 2029 during what was the second coming, where MaxTac was sent in to destroy them all. But the Reckoners were the ones who survived, and they'll go around stating that there will be the harvest of souls when the gibbering eye of the void will open, gaze upon the earth, and obliterate the unfaithful. Because they are the last of these cults, they now thrive in the city. This gang isn't the most violent out there, but they will absolutely beat individuals to a pulp and grab their donations from their body. Donations, in quotations. But their leader, who is known as the beloved gaping maw of the gibbering eye, knows about marketing and realizes that this is how you get people on board. Because of this, they offer food and shelter to runaways and the homeless, as well as broadcast sermons on 96.1 Fever Dream, placing them amongst the most popular tracks of the time. They also have a gibbering eye plushie, which became a massive hit at Christmas 2044. So whilst they are in this list for being violent, because they can be to get their donations, they are actually just trying to manipulate the populace to believe in the day of reckoning, which they call the Harvest of Souls. Next is the Toe Cutters, who as of 2045 are run by an unknown individual, and their hangouts are also unknown. This is simply because they are a vicious group of individuals who attack specific parts of Night City, those being North Hayward and New Westbrook, and then disappear. But the worst part of it all is that this group tortures their captured individuals by slicing off the toes of them. Some of the members will then go on to eat the toes in front of the victim, or some even force the captor to eat their own. Essentially, that is all that is known about these insane foot-loving psychopaths. The Undertow, however, is run by Johnny Rydell and base themselves within West Hill Church of God in downtown, donning 1950s greaser attire. The whole point of the Undertow is to, in their eyes, keep downtown real. This essentially means they will fight all they can against the Chamber of Commerce's takeover of the district, but the problem is they are really bad at doing that, as they have no real planning or tactical skills. Essentially, the gang just targets anyone who they think is a good hit at the time with whatever they have on hand, and usually that is when they are drunk on smash. Because of their love of the 1950s, they also use Molotov cocktails, but do also use things like cheap pistols, especially when fighting with the Eurotrashers or doing drive-bys on corporate-backed construction sites. Essentially, it seems like they are extremely dumb 1950s greasers who don't really know what they stand for. And finally, in the violent gangs, we have the Wild Things, who are led by Jenny Nails. This group runs their operations within Mega Building H11, or Iron Spirit, in the Watson development area, as well as the gang's club of the area known as Red Line, going around the city under the banner of a snake's skull branded into their chests or made out of a scar. This gang is all about violence, and has been since the 2020s. Originally, they were boosters who lived on drugs, but after the Fourth Corporate War, things changed, as members would all start flatlining on cheap supplies that had poison, as well as picking fights with desperate refugees willing to die over scraps of food. They knew they needed to change to survive, and suddenly the violence turned into mega violence, but channeled into blood sport, where the members would channel their anger and release it in front of crowds to make money and prove their dominance. This was all held at the Red Line Club, but that wasn't all they did. They also hired themselves out as a form of protection, becoming bodyguards as well as hustle work, but their ultimate goal was to be at the top of the leaderboards at their club. Because of this, the Wild Things do not use handheld weapons. They will only use things that are a part of their body that can be natural limbs or extensions on them. There is a major focus on martial arts, cyber weapons and melee weapons, and anything else is frowned upon, much like the Animals later in 2077. The Wild Things are all about ferocity and not weakling guns, and that is shown through their blood sport. Technically, the Wild Things fall under a protection gang, but because of their love of violence were put into that section. However, here we will be looking at the gangs who make their living from this specific role. The first is the notorious 6th Street Gang, who I have actually explored before. But the 6th Street Gang were essentially military veterans now turned vigilantes and then further turned into private security contractors. Because of their military background, that is where they got their funding from and were brought in to protect the people of Night City. Under the new leadership of Solomon X. Wright, they have bold ambitions to become a PMC on the order of Militech or Lazarus, and in 2045 they are seen as a very good option for private protection, especially when the NCPD can't or won't do anything about it. North Haywood is where they have been given their largest contract thanks to the city manager, and because of that they have been deputized as law enforcement agents. Every contract they bring in helps fund the gang more and more. It pays their wages, gives them better equipment, and help them become bigger and better. However, they still lack some funds, and because of that they have to dive into more less honourable tasks, which include protection schemes, blackmail, and selling assets seized during dubious law enforcement actions. They aren't to be messed with, however. As mentioned, they are all military trained, and because of it know how to solve a problem or two, and even their newest members are fully trained by the highest ranks, meaning they have no real weak points. Essentially, they are brilliant at what they do, but that's not to say they are to be fully trusted, because if they need the money, they will do anything to get it. The Deadwoods work under a traditional sheriff's badge as their logo and wear full-on cowboy-themed clothes. Their leader, Isaiah Gunslinger Hurston, keeps them in check and sells them a dream that following the code of the Old West will improve Night City as they go on to guard the cargo trains moving throughout it. This massively pleases the nomad nations and cargo companies who love the extra protection from them and accept it every chance they can, especially as it doesn't cost them any eddies. The Deadwoods just do it as part of their civic duty. So how do they get money? Well, that comes from the Molly May Casino in the Glen, where they raise their capital through gambling, sex work, security, and extortion. But when on a mission escorting a train, the gang members will ride their motorbikes with it or ride shotgun on the train's roof. Holding their revolvers and shotguns, the Deadwoods are the perfect sight to see if you're taking cargo into Night City. Under the leadership of Edwina Eddie Singh is the Gold Dragons, who used to be a low-level booster gang, but now have a private investor named David Ling Po, who has promoted them into being deputized law enforcers within Little China. Now with this role, the gang undergoes a code of honor that they have got from old Hong Kong action movies, and they stick to that code to the letter, almost like they're a poser gang now. Because of this, they are deadly if you mess with how things work in Little China, as the Gold Dragons will hit you with insane acrobatics when in a duel, as well as fire from SMGs, and it's rumoured that they have enhanced eye cyberware so that David Ling Po can watch over his territory. So essentially don't mess with Ling Po or you'll find a ton of Gold Dragons on your doorstep. The Princesses of Justice used to be a poser gang, but now do not associate themselves with the primetime players. Technically, they are based off a cute cartoon, but the reason they aren't a full-on poser gang for this cartoon is because they have a fierce focus on fighting back against domestic abuse and helping the victims of it. Their leader is an incredible lady named Adorable, who has a passion for helping the weak and serving justice in almost a religious type of way. Located in their hangout known as Princess Land in the University District, the Princesses of Justice go around spreading the word about how they are a safe haven for those who need it, and if anyone comes to them, they will be fully protected in their home of Princess Land. You would not want to fight against them either, because they have the weaponry from the show, which includes things like flaming swords and electrified whips, weapons that in their eyes have been given special powers. So ultimately, if you know anyone who is abusive at home, they will feel the wrath of the Princesses of Justice. Run by Gomez and Ophelia, we have another goth-inspired poser gang known as the Sinful Adams. As you can imagine, these individuals have body sculpted themselves to look like the Addams family of old. However, not everyone has to look like that to be a part of this gang. That's only for the loyalists. Located within an old graveyard simply known as the Boneyard, the Adams have built up a small community and shantytown that looks out for the homeless of the area, where they make their own food, brew their own booze out of berries, and even run a small school. During Halloween Halloween, the gang also launches a carnival and opens it up to residents of the surrounding area. Whilst they seem pretty harmless, Ophelia is their war leader and trains all of their members to make sure they are ready for combat, utilizing small arms, long blades, cyber weapons and martial arts. So basically don't go insulting these goths and their shantytown out within the old graveyard, or you might have Wednesday Addams take you out with some cyberware. Ever wondered if Night City had any gay gangs? Well, you're in luck because the Street Queens tick that box. What was once the Black Queens, this gang has evolved over time and now base themselves within the new Westbrook, watching over the LGBTQ+ communities, especially those who have been pushed away by families or religion. That said, it isn't all great because their leader, Maxime Raunch, goes around accusing some queer bars of being populated by sellouts and shuns them completely. There's also purity tests that people have to undergo as well, so it's not the nicest of welcomes. Because they are the only gay gang of this type, no one stands up to their ways, but it's only a matter of time. Despite all of that, they are extremely big within the underground club scene and get up to regular acts of drug and sex work, and that leads to occasional conflicts with other gangs such as the Voodoo Boys and the Piranhas. This means most of their gang members are fully armed at all times, but if you really are vulnerable as a LGBTQ+ individual, then this is the gang for you, as they will protect you in their hangouts. After the Fourth Corporate War, a new way of honouring the dead was set up. It wasn't cremation, it wasn't burying, it was placing them at a new location called the Columbarium, and it was here where the people could honour the dead. However, crime and vandalism still occurred here, and now were specifically targeting this location, so the NCPD had to take action, and with it, hired an assassin known only as Mr. Reaper, who went on to form his own gang of protectors, known as the Tombstone Preservers. Their goal was to not only protect the Columbarium, but any place dedicated to the dead of Night City. Now doing their jobs of protecting, these Tombstone Preservers are easily recognisable by their fully bald heads and extremely well-tailored suits. Mr. Reaper personally trains all of them, as he is a master in martial arts and many weapons. As a result, every single member of the Tombstone Preservers is a solo, so they are not to be messed with. So think about that next time you want to desecrate a grave in Night City. Finally, for the protectors, we have of course the Tiger Claws, who we have explored before, but we will focus on them just in 2045. Located in many different locations under the leadership of Shinobu II, the Tiger Claws are essentially a puppet gang for the megacorporation of Arasaka, or at least they were before the whole of the corporate center went up thanks to the nuke. Now with Arasaka gone from the city, the gang once known as the Tiger's Claw were left behind to fend for themselves. This is where their leader Shinobu Nakagawa got involved and convinced multiple corporations to form the Night City Co-Prosperity Sphere, and with it, went on to build a new home for the pushed aside Japanese populace. With that set up, the Tiger's Claw gang transformed into the Tiger Claws and became this area's official protectors. Now everything within Kabuki and Old Japantown is under their rule, and their subsidiary of Kimengumi allows them to have a foothold in all local businesses from clinics, taxi ranks and martial arts studios. If you try and start anything in this part of Night City, just know you'll be dealing with all of the Tiger Claws and their experience of working with Arasaka back in the day. Finally, we have the gangs who are either obsessed with drugs or are pretty unique in their own way. We start with the gang known as the Culper Ring, an extremely secretive organisation that seems to base itself within the NorCal military base. Ultimately, this gang, if you can even call it a gang, holds on to the old idea that California shouldn't have been split and claimed itself as a free state, and wants to return it to the good old days. One nation, under God, indivisible, and military rule for all is the motto they live by, as they all come from military backgrounds, ultimately being a secret sect of airmen, soldiers and sailors. Their sole duty and goals that they do on their day-to-day is reporting back military information about what is going on in Northern California and the Pacific Confederation to the United States government. Apart from that, it is unknown what else goes on within or how it's all set up, but trying to shut them down would be a big disaster, as they are all expected to have some of the best trained military individuals within them. On the other side of the spectrum, we have the Dirty Hippies, who focus mainly on making drugs in their own little gardens. Under the leadership of Canary, the Dirty Hippies were the ones to make specialized smokable drugs for the city that they would name ganja. Essentially, it's just dried weed sprayed with a variety of chemicals, however many who use it see it as a somewhat ritual to smoke it and much prefer it to injecting or snorting. Funnily enough, despite their peace sign logo and image, the gang doesn't actually care one bit about peace and love. Instead, they do not shy away from carrying any weapon they can get a hold of and will take out anyone who threatens them. Located in the middle of Voodoo Boy territory, that should tell you all you need to know about how confident and powerful they are. So yeah, don't try and crush those dirty hippies or they'll slaughter you with all of their guns. The Dragula races are next, and as you can probably guess from the name, focus on drag racing. This gang is relatively harmless as they have more of a focus on body sculpting to look like monsters and hot rod racing in their souped up hearses. These gang members dominate the racing scene because of it and will also heavily protect their events, carrying pistols on them, but their cars are also usually fitted with machine guns and rocket launchers that they can use with just the click of a button. So yeah, if you want to race, this is the gang for you. Just don't cheat or mess around or you'll be blown up by a souped up hearse. Fixie's Couriers is an anarchistic collective of bicycle and motorbike couriers under the leadership of a lady named, you've probably guessed it, Fixie. Thanks to her father's inspiration, Fixie has allowed her gang or courier service to become one of the best services to go to for small package deliveries in Night City. And that's ultimately it. They're just a courier service. However, unlike other corporate ones, if they are threatened at all, the gang will take actions into their own hands, especially if they're cornered. Now, do you absolutely love anime and talking about it all the time? Don't worry, this isn't an ad, this is an actual gang. Well, you're in luck. There's a gang for you to join. This is the G3, who are actually an extremely violent poser gang who love all things Japanese, especially anime. As a result, they have founded their own unique business and set up the radio station 100.0 G3 Gungao. The biggest problem with this gang is, whilst they look like their favourite anime and Japanese pop culture idols, most of them are sheer moments away from cyberpsychosis, so you never know when talking to one if you're just engaging with a nice anime lover or a murdering psycho. Under the leadership of Hazumi Ihara, if you share the same love for anime and J-pop, you will probably fit in here. If not, then you'll probably be slaughtered by them at some point. Another drug gang is known as the Shroomers, who are said to be a survival gang. Essentially, after the Fourth Corporate War, a group of mycologists teamed up with a survivalist group and founded this new gang named the Shroomers, where they would start underground farming specializing in fungi. Keeping to themselves, the gang only occasionally came out of their hideout to trade, but eventually made a deal with an individual named Mrs. Suzuki, who owned a chain of bodegas. However, this gang has lived underground so long that is all they seem to know, and because of it, have a really tight community as a result. That said, they have a custom where at the age of 18, that individual will take what is called the Wonder Year, where they leave their home and venture the world above. When they return home, most of these individuals will bring home a spouse which will help them diversify the gene pool. But living below isn't all that bad. Because of it, they have been able to work out the whole of Night City's network of tunnels, as well as all of the sunken buildings and basements, and ultimately they know the underground better than anyone else. So essentially, if you get stuck below the city, the Shroomers will be able to help, but once again, don't mess them about, as they're extremely well armed as well. The Voodoo Boys were very different to the Haitian refugees of 2077 and originally were just a group of drug dealers, importing them from Florida and the Caribbean to sell to Night City University students. This helped them grow extremely fast and helped them become the largest supplier of black market substances. As the Fourth Corporate War hit, the Voodoo Boys retreated to Ranch Coronado and were forced into coming up with a new business model. Here they came up with new ways to produce and sell drugs, but it didn't really work, mainly because other gangs such as the Piranhas had better drug production and quality, with other crime organizations making cleaner drugs as well and better sex workers. They tried with casinos as well, but were outdone by other gangs and crime syndicates. Their power essentially was dwindling, and there's nothing they can really do about it. They only exist still thanks to the intimidation and acts of violence. They also have members who are true believers in voodoo, which puts many people off of them, especially as their body modifications also resemble the world of voodoo, with bones through their noses and ears, feather implants, and tons of tattoos. The thing most people notice, however, is that these voodoo boys are actually just white individuals and have got their voodoo inspiration from Hollywood tropes, making them actually just insulting to the real culture. But I wouldn't want to tell them how they're appropriating someone's culture, otherwise I'll be at the end of their machetes and guns. The Willows originated back in the 2020s and were used to be eye candy for the wealthy elite, but not only that, were heavily trained in martial arts, so were also used as bodyguards. As they were body sculpted individuals, they were seen as a poser gang. But during the Fourth Corporate War, teamed up with Zeta Tech and became somewhat assassins to take out rivals of EBM, the IEC, and Microtech. They also formed into a close sisterhood during this time. But sadly, during one mission, a lot of the sisterhood would be wiped out, all apart from one individual who would become the next leader, the girl named Ingenui. The Ingenui was lost for a good while and wanted to drink herself into a grave. That was until a member of the bar, the Forlorn Hope, named John the Professor Freeman, offered her a job, creating a small group for female veterans who needed a woman's only space. With that, she accepted and created the Willows, naming it after her lost sisters. With that, the Willows met once a month to discuss their lives at the clinic in the old combat zone named From the Ashes. Some of the best edge runners and net runners are a part of this group, which includes the Queen of the Afterlife, Rogue. It's said that if a member has a personal problem they have to deal with, the Willows will all band together and help kit them out, ready for that problem. So ultimately, don't mess around with these women. They mean business and are some of the best in Night City. Named after the Wizard of Oz, the Yellow Brick Road Gang are seen as just another poser gang, but their leader, Dorothy, or the Queen of Oz, is a genius drug engineer, and that helps them stand out as more than just posers. Thanks to Dorothy, they have created the latest street drug named Emerald City, as well as custom drugs for wealthy clients that are specifically engineered to give you the highs of the drug but without any side effects whatsoever. Because of this, the gang kits themselves in weaponry to defend themselves, but it's all within the theme. Lions and Totos have cyber weapons, woodsmen carry axes, and scarecrows carry pistols. Thanks to their incredible drug making skills, it's most likely they are an extremely wealthy gang, and I can imagine would be terrifying to seeing in public, especially if you have a lion and small dog chasing you down with high-grade cyber weapons. And finally, to end the list once and for all, we have the Zoners. Under the leadership of Tearjerker and Freefall, these Zoners do not believe themselves to actually be a gang. They see themselves as the word of the people and people that speak the truth and advocate for the safety and well-being of the people of South Night City. Originally, this group asked for permission to protest, but when that was denied, they did it anyway, trying to convince those at the top to stop pumping money into the Glen and putting it back into South Night City. However, like most scenarios, the NCPD got brought in, and that's when the violence began, with the Zoners carrying a variety of weapons on their persons. So sure, they can be seen as looking out for the community, but is what they do actually helping with anything? But with that said, that wraps up this massive list of gangs from Night City in the year of 2045. It's a shame 2077 only has just a small handful from this list, but I can understand why from a gameplay perspective. But I do hope in the next game we see some of the more crazy sides to Night City, especially with some of the poser gangs out there. But I guess we shall just have to wait and see. For now, these have been the gangs of Night City in the year of 2045. I want to say a big thank you for getting this far in the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you want more Cyberpunk 2045 lore, I got more videos coming out soon, or you can get the source book for yourself. You won't be disappointed. There is absolutely tons of lore within it. So make sure if you do want to get it, use my link below to get 10% off of it. Big thanks to my patrons once again for supporting the channel, including my small fishes, my big fishes, Anthony Bonfiglio, my YouTube channel Wise One, Sith Lord 906, Video Game Player 7555, the Nanotarium, and Amanda Berlin, my sharks Dan F, Lorena R, and Hazy Thoughts, and my Megalodon Sinus. But with that all said, a big thank you once again for watching, and I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.